July 27th, 2023. The Bottleneck on K2, 8,200 meters up in the dark before dawn. Around 50 climbers stepped past a dying man to reach the summit. His name was Mohammad Hassan, and it was not on any permit. K2 is not the tallest mountain on Earth, but it may be the most feared, the second highest peak on the planet. It has long killed at a rate many times higher than Everest's. It sits on the border between Pakistan and China, inside a restricted military zone. That summer, more people crowded it than ever before. Not one team, not a dozen teams, but around 200 climbers were pushing for the top on a single morning. It should have been the safest season in the mountain's history. But the summit reached that morning was built on something Pakistan would later rule illegal. What I find most unsettling is that it was never one broken rule, but a whole chain of them, running from a village in the Karakoram into the death zone. This is how a summit gets reached by breaking the rules meant to keep it safe. This is how illegal climbers reach the summit of K2. Welcome to Tourist Tragedies. To understand why this matters, you have to understand what K2 actually asks of a human body. Everest is higher, but Everest is forgiving by comparison. On K2, there is no easy route, no gentle slope, no margin. Only a tiny fraction as many people have ever stood on the summit of K2 as have stood on Everest, and a grim number of them never came back down. The standard line up the mountain passes directly beneath the Great Serac, a tower of unstable glacial ice that can break away without a single second of warning and sweep everything below it off the face. Climbers pass under it as fast as they can and pray. What I find remarkable is that a place this hostile has, in the last decade, become a commercial destination. Guiding companies now sell K2 the way they sell Everest, with fixed ropes, bottled oxygen, and teams of local porters carrying the loads. That commercial machine is what put 200 people on the mountain that July. And that same machine is what put Mohammad Hassan on the fixed ropes in a pair of ordinary trousers. So, who was actually on that mountain and what were they chasing? At the front of the pack was a record attempt the whole climbing world was watching. Norwegian climber Kristin Harila and her guide Tingen Sherpa were trying to summit all 14 of the world's 8,000-meter peaks in record time, and K2 was the final one. Reach that summit, and they would have done it in 92 days, 3 months, and a single day, faster than anyone in history. Behind them were dozens of paying clients who had spent years and tens of thousands of dollars for this one chance. And underneath all of them, doing the invisible work, were the porters. It is worth pausing on what that work actually pays. A Pakistani high-altitude porter earns a fraction of what a Nepali Sherpa doing the same job earns, and even a summit bonus can run close to a third lower. Pakistan has produced some of the toughest mountain workers alive, but almost no internationally certified guides, while neighboring Nepal has more than 90. The men who carry the loads are often the most skilled and the least protected people on the mountain. This is where the story turns human. Mohammad Hassan was 27 years old. He was a father of 3 from the village of Taisar in the Shigar Valley, and he had taken this job for the oldest reason in the world. He needed the money. His mother was sick and needed treatment, and his children, he told a friend, were going to get the education he never had. For a high-altitude porter on K2, a summit meant a bonus, and a bonus meant all of that became possible. But here is the detail that would matter more than any other. Hassan had never done this before. He had worked as a low-altitude porter, carrying loads to base camp at around 5,000 meters. He had never been high on a mountain in his life, and now he was being sent above 8,000 meters into the most dangerous stretch of one of the deadliest mountains on Earth to help carry the ropes that everyone else would climb on. For you and me, a new job with a steep learning curve is a stressful week. For Mohammad Hassan, it was a job where the learning curve ran straight through the death zone. To see how this happened, you have to follow the season as it built. By the middle of July, the weather models were lining up. A summit window was opening, the first good stretch in weeks, and every expedition on the mountain committed to it at once. That is why the numbers were so high. When a window opens on K2, everyone goes, because you may not get a second chance. Ahead of the clients, a rope fixing team went up first. Their job is the hardest and least glamorous on the mountain. They break trail through fresh snow and anchor the fixed ropes, the lifelines that every climber behind them will clip into all the way to the top. That fixing team was mostly made up of experienced Sherpas from several companies working together, and Mohammad Hassan was sent up to support them, carrying rope, employed by a Pakistani outfitter called Layla Peak Expedition. Now, under Pakistan's mountaineering rules, an outfitter has clear obligations to a porter like Hassan. They are supposed to make sure he is trained. They are supposed to insure him. They are supposed to provide, or make certain he has, the proper high-altitude gear. Here is what actually happened, according to the government's own inquiry. Hassan was handed a sum of cash, around $800, and told to buy his own equipment. Whether he could not find the right gear or chose to save the money for his family, the result was the same. He went up the mountain without it. Other climbers later told investigators they had seen him during the acclimatization rotations, up at Camp 2 and Camp 3, climbing in what looked like ordinary trousers and a normal jacket, not a down suit. This is the part that I keep coming back to. A man was moving up one of the most dangerous mountains in the world, visibly underdressed for it, in front of dozens of experienced professionals over a period of days. And the machinery of the expedition kept moving. Nobody stopped it. Think about what that means. It is the equivalent of a construction crew watching a new worker walk onto the top floor of a skyscraper with no harness and no helmet for days, and simply carrying on with the schedule. By the night of the 26th of July, everything was aligned. The window was open. The ropes were going in. Around 200 people were moving up toward the summit in a single long line of headlamps. Somewhere in that line, carrying rope for the men ahead of him, was a first-time high-altitude porter in the wrong clothes. Everything was on track. That was exactly the problem. The final summit push began on the evening of the 26th. Teams left the high camp at Camp 3 in the dark, around 8 in the evening, to climb through the night and reach the top near dawn. It is a strange, silent world up there. A line of small lights strung up a black wall of ice and rock, each climber sealed inside their own hood and mask. The only sounds the crunch of crampons and the hiss of oxygen. Far ahead, you could see the headlamps of the fixing team, already working. The route narrows as it climbs toward the Bottleneck, that couloir of ice directly under the Great Serac, the single most dangerous place on the entire mountain. This is where the ropes matter most. This is where there is no room for error. At around 2:15 in the morning, high in the Bottleneck, Mohammad Hassan slipped. He was clipped to the fixed rope, so he did not fall far, only 5 to 7 meters, but it was enough. He came to rest hanging upside down between two ice anchors, his climbing harness twisted up around his knees, locking him in that inverted position. And now, every weakness in his situation turned fatal at once. He had no down suit against a cold that can kill exposed skin in minutes. He had no proper gloves. He had no oxygen mask of his own. Hanging head down at 8,200 meters, exhausted from a climb his body had never been prepared for, he could not right himself. And he was directly in the path of 200 people who were, at that exact moment, beginning to arrive at the narrowest, most lethal choke point on K2. To understand what happened over the next few hours, you first need to understand the system that put him there. So, let me explain what legal climbing on K2 actually requires, because that is the key to this whole story. You cannot simply walk up K2, because the mountain sits in a restricted border zone next to China and the disputed frontier with India. Every expedition needs a government permit, obtained through a registered Pakistani operator, and is assigned an Army liaison officer. That is the paperwork layer, but the rules go further than permits. Pakistan's mountaineering regulations, written back in 1999, also lay down duties toward the local staff. Every porter is supposed to be named on the permit. Every porter is supposed to be insured, so that if he is hurt or killed, his family is protected. And every porter is supposed to be properly trained and equipped for the altitude he is being sent to. Think of it like the rules on any dangerous worksite. The permit is the building permit, but the insurance and the safety gear are the part that actually protects the person doing the work. Here is what the inquiry found. Mohammad Hassan was not named on the expedition permit. He was not insured, he was not equipped as the rules require, and he had none of the experience the mountain demanded. In other words, the arrangement that carried him up to 8,000 meters broke the law at almost every point where the law was meant to protect him. When people ask how illegal climbing happens on K2, they imagine somebody sneaking past a checkpoint. The reality is quieter and far more troubling. The illegality was not a climber slipping past a guard. It was built into the summit itself. And then, in the bottleneck, the line kept moving. Hassan hung upside down in the cold. Climbers reached the obstacle and had to get past. Some tried to help him. Kristen Harla's team stopped. Her cameraman, Gabriel Tarso, gave up his own oxygen and stayed with him. Tenjin Sherpa tried to haul him upright. For a while, a small group fought to save him. But the terrain was brutal and the clock was against them. An avalanche went off nearby. A distress call came in, and the decision was made to keep climbing. One by one, the others came through. Based on the drone footage and eyewitness accounts, around 50 people passed Mohammad Hassan while he was still alive. Some passed him twice, going up and coming back down. Most did not stop. Slowly, over hours, in the cold and the thin air, he died where he hung. And above him, that same morning, the record was set. The summit was reached. The story might have ended there, unseen, the way many porter deaths have. It did not, because two climbers who had turned back lower down, Austrian Wilhelm Steindl and German filmmaker Philipp Flamig, had drone footage. When Flamig later reviewed it, the images were unmistakable, a line of climbers moving past a man still faintly alive on the ropes. The footage went around the world and set off a furious debate about mountaineering ethics and who, if anyone, was to blame. But away from the outrage was a quieter reality. In the village of Taizar, a mother wept, holding her son's portrait. A widow and 3 young children had lost the person who provided for them. Steindl visited the family, saw their situation, and started a fundraiser that eventually brought in more than 120,000 euros, enough for a house, some land, and money set aside for the children. And Mohammad Hassan's body stayed where it was, frozen high on K2 for an entire year before a Pakistani team finally brought him home. When you lay the sequence of events out in order, a clear picture begins to form, and it is not the picture the headlines painted. The tragedy in the bottleneck was the last link in the chain, not the first. The first link was an economic one. High-altitude portering is dangerous work done by some of the poorest people in the region for pay that is a fraction of what the climbers around them are spending, and a single summit bonus can be worth more than a year of ordinary wages. That pressure is what made a first-time porter say yes to a job far beyond his experience. The second link was the outfitter. Layla Peak Expedition put an untrained, uninsured man on the ropes and handed him cash instead of making sure he was equipped, which is exactly the corner cutting the rules exist to prevent. The third link was oversight, or the lack of it. Hassan was off the permit and visibly underdressed for days, and the system that is supposed to catch precisely this never did. And the final link was the crowd itself, 200 people funneling through one deadly choke point, where a rescue that might have been possible with a few climbers became almost impossible in a traffic jam. I think the honest answer to how illegal climbers reach the summit of K2 is this. It is not a checkpoint that gets dodged, it is a gap, the space between the rules written on paper and what actually happens on the mountain, and that gap gets filled by the cheapest and most vulnerable people in the chain. Call it the permit gap. For now, there have been real consequences. The Gilgit-Baltistan government ran a formal inquiry, and although it ruled the death itself accidental, it found Layla Peak Expedition in violation of the 1999 mountaineering rules for failing to train, insure, or equip Hassan, and banned the company from operating in the region for 2 years. The report went further, recommending that no porter be sent onto an 8,000er until he has climbed at least one 6,000 and one 7,000 meter peak and completed formal training, that every porter be properly insured, and that trained rescue teams stay acclimatized and ready throughout the climbing season. And there is one last detail that says almost everything. For a year, people insisted Hassan's body could never be recovered from where he died. Then, in 2024, a small Pakistani team brought him down in 48 hours. What had been called impossible turned out to be a matter of will. In the seasons since, Pakistan has overhauled its permit and fee system for K2, tightening the insurance requirements for the porters who make every summit possible. So, here is the verdict. The summit reached on K2 that morning was not undone by one broken rule at the top of the mountain. It was reached because a chain of rules had already been broken, quietly, all the way from a village in the Karakoram to 8,200 meters, long before anyone clipped into the first rope. Mohammad Hassan was failed at every link in that chain, and the mountain simply collected the debt. Now, I want to hear from you. If Mohammad Hassan had been on that permit, insured, trained, and equipped the way the law required, do you think he would have come home? Or was a system built on the cheapest labor always going to fail someone on a morning like that? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one.